Nate, you or I?
I can go. I have a this is a straight ahead ghost story, basically.
Hell yeah.
Insofar as
You know
currently Hurricane Ida is making landfall.
Be safe.
So as this
I got family there.
as this
Be
airs,
safe.
that'll be yesterday. So I thought I'd look into some hurricane ghosts. And as long as Ida isn't too ghastly, this will not look like it aged poorly from the time of recording to tomorrow.
Okay.
Uh,
Fingers crossed.
Timely though. We're gonna get a lot of clicks.
This is about the Labor Day hurricane. It takes place in Florida. A little history. Henry Morse, this is also from Florida's Ghostly Legends and Haunted Folklore.
Love their stuff. Good work over there.
Henry Morrison Flagler, founder of Standard Oil, architect of the Grand Ponce de Leon Hotel in St. Augustine, and creator of Palm Beach Island's Whitehall Mansion, was one of Florida's most remarkable visionaries. By the 1880s, Flagler decided to extend his brilliance and wealth as far south in Florida as he could go, with visions of providing his hotel's guests with the most modern transportation available. In order to do this, he simply assembled an entire railroad system.
Simply, he's like, I will just do it.
No big. He purchased existing railroads that ran from Jacksonville to Daytona Beach, then extended their lines and service all the way to Palm Beach, Miami, and eventually to Key West. From the beginning, Flagler considered all the possibilities for his railroad, with the construction of the Panama Canal going on at the time. If his railroad reached as far south as Key West, arriving and departing Panama workers would have better access to it from the mainland. However, because Key West is more than 100 miles off the coast, Flagler had to build a bridge. So that's that bridge that you always see in movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
That crazy long monster Keys Bridge.
Really?
So you kind of have to know. Yeah, this is that guy built this thing, put a railway on it, called it the East Coast or the Florida East Coast Railway. That was in 1912.
Okay.
That's awesome.
That's enterprising.
I also like things like that. You all just learned about me.
We did. You really perked up.
I know. I was looking at my D&D character sheet, trying to figure out if I get
There's like feats of engineering.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh.
Do you, Roger?
Forward.
Do you like trains?
I do. Yes.
You seem like you might like trains.
They're my favorite part of the Westerns.
It's pretty cool. I get it.
Fast forward to 1935. It was during the morning of September 1st, 35, when the storm warnings were posted from Palm Beach to the Keys. People in Miami began boarding up their homes and securing their boats. In the Keys, the native Indians chanted and prayed, while the others in their tribe gathered food and made shelter for what they called, quote, a big blow. Others in the area were having extra meals cooked, candles collected, and lamps filled with oil. The islanders prepared for the loss of electricity, which could last for weeks. They prepared for the worst. Meteorologists were sure that by Monday, Labor Day, the storm would hit. By 1:30 that Monday afternoon, the local authorities called for the evacuation transport from Homestead, but they received no reply, just static. Sadly, there were no advanced plans for such an emergency, no strategy for evacuation. There was no passenger train or fuel or cargo train in Homestead at the time, so the town leaders had to send a message to Miami to have a train sent as soon as possible. Unfortunately,
message
to Miami.
Sorry.
And they got a ton of coke.
It just sounds like they were gonna do like rough up Miami.
Unfortunately, it was late in the evening before a train left the station. It was close to 9 p.m. when it arrived to pick up hundreds of people from the upper and middle Keys. It had taken close to 4 hours to reach Islamorada. The storm became so strong and deadly with such unbelievable winds that the 10 passenger cars were tossed off the track and onto their sides, ripping and twisting the tracks from their foundations. Meanwhile, a good number of the natives and migrant workers had hidden in huts and abandoned houses. Some even strapped themselves to palm trees in the hopes of riding out the storm. By Tuesday morning, in the wake of one of Florida's most devastating hurricanes, a Category 5 with winds over 180 miles an hour, many of the smaller keys had completely disappeared, and hundreds of people were reported missing.
Wow.
The survivors crawled out of their shelters and took part in the search. In the end, the islands were all but destroyed. The houses were now rubble and debris, and when the gruesome search for the missing was over, the death count was unbelievable.
Wow.
People who tied themselves to the trees now hung over the ropes, twisted and barely recognizable.
Good God.
Some of the victims floated out in the bay, some washed up on the shore, still others were pulled out of the swamps, and over 400 victims were never to be seen again.
Wow.
Some of the train's cars that were tossed into the water remain there today, as well as automobiles that were scurrying for safety. For the hundreds of men, women, and children who lost their lives that day, their final moments will remain a mystery. The East Coast Railway was not rebuilt. The Overseas Road and Toll Commission purchased the railroad and converted the single-track trestles into a two-lane unbroken highway from Homestead to Key West in 1938. Although the march of progress continued with tour buses now bringing income and revenue to the islands, the trucks that carried in produce, meats, textiles, and cargo made the maritime shipping lanes almost obsolete. With recovery well underway, life in Florida Keys was beginning to move forward again. This was all well and fine, but almost immediately, strange things began to take place.
Yeah. I don't doubt it.
The
I knew
sound
it.
of
Get out
the
of
sound,
there.
yeah. Another reason to leave Florida. The sound of a train whistle and the thundering of a steam engine passing could sometimes be heard late at night. Now and again, headlights for misty antique cars could be seen silently rolling by in the wee hours of the morning.
Scary.
On occasion, and still to this day, the eerie shapes of people, literally hundreds of people, appear silently walking through the marshland swamps in the darkness.
Yeesh.
When the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 took its toll on the Florida Keys that fateful Monday evening, leaving hundreds of dead and hundreds more homeless or missing, it also left something even more terrifying: the
Yeah.
restless roaming victims of that killer storm.
Wow.
Talking with fishermen on the banks of the ocean near the 7 Mile Bridge, I was offered some frightening accounts of paranormal events that should not be left out of any collection of ghost stories. Stories of phantom trains and vaporous cars, of eerie headlights, and the shadows of people staggering through the swampy estuaries.
Yikes.
They are, as one angler said, enough to, quote, curl your toes.
There's ghosts everywhere.
As the old fisherman recalled, the first sightings began in the early 1940s, and one man was more than willing to share one of his own experiences. It was around 1943 when he and another boy would fish under the remains of the original bridge that once held the tracks of Flagler's Railway. They would cast their nets near the bridge's discarded wreckage because the fish and shrimp were more plentiful there. Although the majority of the original structure had been converted for vehicle use, there were remains of the original tracks and pylons that littered the banks back then. As the story goes, while these two boys were shrimping under a section of the old bridge one evening, a storm was forming offshore. With flashes of lightning and what looked like a thick wall of rain closing in, it seemed like a good idea to pull in their nets and get home as fast as they could. But the storm, quickly approaching, altered the boys' plans. As they were folding their nets and putting on their shoes, the first splattering of rain began, but within a few moments, the light rain had turned into a torrential storm. The two boys were now collecting their gear as fast as they could, hoping not to be struck by lightning. They started to climb the bank, but just as they were grabbing hold of an old iron track, a bolt of lightning seemed to hit only a few yards away. The lightning was so close they both could feel the hair on the backs of their necks standing on end, and with that they decided to duck under the cement pylons, where there was a small hollowed-out area surrounded by granite stones. They'd been sitting there for a few minutes, recalled the old fisherman, when they heard a train whistle in the distance. They both looked at each other in amazement, because there should be no trains there, not anymore. The boys knew a little about the train that once ran there and that the hurricane blew it off the tracks. But that was many years before.
Ooh.
Choo boo. Like, boo boo.
The old man said that after a minute or two, his friend pulled himself up by the iron railing to get a good look at what was making the whistle noise. A moment later, he dropped back down with a strange, pale look on his face. The boy looked at him in a very weird way and said that he'd just seen a train light on the tracks heading right towards them. The two of them didn't know what to think, let alone what to do about the astonishing situation.
Jeez.
But the sounds of a thundering locomotive were getting louder by the second. They were both too scared to respond, so they just sat there. Within seconds, the rumbling was...
Well, okay, listen. I don't know what to do if a train's coming either, but I know one thing you're not supposed to do.
Lie down? Like a
No.
Charlie Chaplin movie?
No, that doesn't
Yeah.
work. That's how you get peeled in half from the feet up.
Within seconds, the rumbling was right over them, and the old train track foundation was vibrating, then rocking violently. The sound of the train whistle was so loud they had to hold their ears. As they looked ahead, they both realized that there was no track just beyond them. This was gone years ago. This train was going to crash.
Jeez, yikes.
The boys buried their faces in their laps, waiting for the terrible collision. Yet the rumbling of the train just faded away. The whistle ceased, and the only thing they heard was the dying storm. They looked out and saw nothing but the falling rain and a few flashes of distant lightning. They saw nothing. There was no train. Needless to say, this event
Weird.
spawned many ghost stories, and in the
Wow.
process created a local legend that few outsiders have heard.
Fucking
two
hell.
Yeah. The two boys witnessed a strange event indeed, and although this is not by far the only phantom locomotive story today, it is uniquely Floridian. I guess in that they just let it roll over them.
Yeah, and that 2 people got hit by a train. Fucking hell.
If phantom trains aren't ominous enough, then ghostly cars passing in the darkness surely are. On more than one occasion, old-fashioned automobiles have been seen slowly puttering by on the old highway in Islamorada, rather. These cars are usually black, said to be like those driven in the 1930s or 40s, with only their dim headlights eerily shining through on foggy mornings and making only the faint sounds of a distant motor. They make it past the first part of the bridge, then dissolve away, as one witness put it, like an effervescent pill in water, blinking a bit, like a light losing its power, then disappearing completely. Years ago, a college student, while visiting some friends in Islamorada, saw a black phantom 4-door car moving down the road at 3:45 a.m. As she was walking her dog, the student initially noticed the headlights, which were much dimmer than normal headlights, and at first she thought it might have been 2 bicycles. Then she heard the pitter-patter of an old engine. As soon as she heard this, her little terrier dog began to bark violently, as if something dangerous was approaching. Perhaps it was instinct or just fear that made her pull her dog behind her, but the dog's bark soon became whimpers as the ghostly car passed. At first glance, she thought it might simply be an old antique car passing by, complete with the silhouette of a person in the driver's seat. But as the car neared
Then
the
she
arch,
saw the car's bones.
but as the car neared the arch of the bridge's entrance, something strange happened. The sound of the motor seemed to grind, getting louder as it moved away, and the 2 red lights at the back of the car suddenly disappeared within the foggy mist. A moment of fear descended on her because she thought that the driver may have stopped and shut off the engine, but as she stared hard into the darkness, she knew the car was gone. She walked a bit further to see down the street beyond the bridge, but there was nothing, just empty road.
That's scary, guys. That's scary.
It's one of the worst things I've heard.
It's pretty spooky.
The ghostly car makes its run every once in a while, sometimes passing early morning fishermen or lone pedestrians.
Hello.
Sometimes
Good morning.
the solitary automobile makes no sound at all as it passes over the bridge, only achieving a gasp from the observer when it fades and then disappears into thin air. Although many speculate whose car it once was or why it's seen in this area, the best hypotheses for the phenomenon point to the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. Many people were struggling to find shelter or trying to help those residents with no means of transportation. Perhaps this vehicular apparition represents one person's attempt to save someone else during the storm so long ago. Perhaps that person
Okay.
died trying to help. Perhaps in one way or another, that person's love lives on in the retelling of that fateful day, the final
Sure.
attempts to save a life.
I
And
mean,
although
it's a
this-
stretch, but
Yeah, really putting a lot on there. And although this particular apparition, as well as that of the phantom train, may be the echoes of a race for survival, the last ghostly legends of Flagler's Lost Railroad refers to those who simply disappeared that dreadful Monday morning in 1935, when over 400 people who are still missing to this day.
yikes.
When Tuesday came and the storm was over, the search for the missing turned up grisly finds indeed. In fact, for the next 3 weeks, the decomposing remains of hundreds of people were pulled from the nearby swamps and
Yikes.
estuaries.
Holy shit.
As the torrential waves toppled houses and flooded buildings, the power of the surf was also strong enough to drown a multitude of people. Although the search was intense, many victims remained unfound, trapped under the huge roots of cypress trees or food for the abundant swamp life. To this day, government land workers or environmental laborers still find the occasional skeleton lodged within the receding swamp beds, solemn reminders of that horrible hurricane of so long ago. And although such discoveries are alarming enough, they're not nearly as frightening as what some say they see in those swamps today.
Yikes. I don't like the idea of swamp. I don't know. A swamp zombie? A swampy? Come on. That's the scariest kind, right?
It's one of them, man. It's
Maybe
got
a
like
scarier
it's,
zombie.
Alpha Zombie from Army of the Dead.
No, that's
That's not a real
fantasy.
zombie. Yeah, come on, get your head in the game.
Get it together.
Obviously,
I
it's
guess
moon
you know,
zombie.
what was pretty scary though? That tiger zombie in that movie.
Caused you a lot of fear.
Anyway, Swampy, I'm against him.
Yeah. That we're on Werewolf Radar on record against Swampies.
Against Swampy, scariest kind. I mean, maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe that's what they want. You know, we're here. We got scariest zombie on Werewolf Radar.
We can send them a certificate of some kind.
Scariest zombie.
Yeah, we'll just put it in a crocodile skull and leave it on the side of the road as soon as it gets down there.
Color me Twitter-pated, terrified, mate.
Evidently, several of the locals have seen what appeared to be a mass of people roaming through the estuaries and wilderness late at night.
Yikes.
Though these images, here comes the Swampies.
Here comes the fucking Swampies.
Hide the brains, the Swampies are coming.
Everybody take your brains out. Everybody take off your skin.
Though these images have always been reported as anywhere from 50 to 500 people, all hunched over and shouldered together as if coming from a battle, they seem either to disappear into the thicket or simply vanish from sight. As local legend tells us, these shadowy people were spotted again shortly before Hurricane Andrew hit Homestead in 1992, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, totally.
The exact same spot where they came as a warning again, I guess. Always staggering to the north as if to escape the doomed keys, these ghostly figures seem to be reliving their last hours on Earth. Perhaps these dark images are the remnants of those lost in 1935, or perhaps they're nothing more than an optical illusion for those islanders prone to fancy. I don't think you have an optical illusion of 500 people.
It's a hell of a fucking optical illusion, huh?
I mean, it's one of the better ones. We talk about the Grayman of Scotland and California being like a weird smoke optical illusion, but this one is like nature going like full AV mode, going like, I've learned how to do it.
Yeah, like if you're down there, like a realtor's showing you a house, like, and sometimes when the light hits the swamp just right, it looks like there's 500 hunched over ghosts.
Now, you're gonna want to freak out.
Raggedly walking out of a hurricane.
I urge you, don't freak out.
It's just a trick of the light.
Just relax, be cool. Oh my God.
And hide your brains.
And hide your brains. Take off your skin.
At any rate, these shadowy people are part of South Florida's folklore.
Well, good. It's them. It's the shuffling, horrifying horde, key lime pie, and Dexter. That's what they got. And COVID. So much COVID.
Yeah, tons and tons of plenty of COVID victims are going to join that shuffling mass soon. And
I'm waiting for next year.
Don't join the mass. Get your vaccines.
Yeah, that's your paranormal preparedness for this one. Don't join the mass of
Don't join the mass.
shuffling swampies.
Yeah, don't join this fucking Castlevania boss of a monster. Yikes. Swampies.
Yeah, that particular Florida ghost legend.
Welcome to the Swampy.
All right.
We got hurricanes.
We got hurricanes. God damn
You
it.
can die the train you want.
Oh,
Are you now ready to wrap up heading to the west?
I'm ready to wrap up by heading into the west. I don't even know what that means, and I'm so excited.
All right. Well,
also,
join
if you are
me
down there, please stay safe.
Yes. Evacuate if you need. Use your local news and everything to
Use
find
the
safe
news.
shelter.
Fill your tub with water. I don't know. That's what they say.
Now, this article